Welcome back to Be Seen, Be Heard, Be Proud. In this episode, I sit down with the incredible Christine Renee, a Brooklyn-based fashion designer who has been making her mark in the industry for over 20 years, y'all. Christine opens up about her deeply personal journey, growing up biracial, facing bullying, struggling to find belonging, and how those challenges shaped the resilient, authentic woman she is today. She shares how embracing her identity, overcoming invincibility in the fashion world, and stands true to herself led her to design for big names and to pour back into her community through nonprofit and volunteer work. You'll hear powerful insights about self-love, authenticity, and perseverance, as well as how Christine turns struggles into strength and purpose. This is an inspiring, real, and raw conversation you don't want to miss. Let's dive in. And one more thing before we get started, y'all. Can you subscribe to my podcast and leave a review? Can you like on social media and share an episode or two? Thank you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to my podcast, Be Seen, Be Heard, Be Proud. And I'm super, super delighted to bring this guest to you today. You know, I told y'all that I had some amazing guests lined up, and today is no exception. Today we have Christine Renee. Is it Renee?
Renee.
Christine Renee. And Christine Renee is an amazing artist here out of Brooklyn, in the fashion industry for like 20 years, since 2004, and has done a lot with her designs and has a really interesting backstory and also her volunteer work. And I want to get into that and share that with you. I happened to see Christine on TikTok and I was looking at her post. I was like, oh my God, I have to have. What's your pronoun, Christine?
She, her.
Okay, I have to have her on my show because you all have to hear this amazing story. So let's just jump right in. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for having me. I'm really humbled and honored. Thank you.
And you're so beautiful. For those of you who are watching as well, because we have audio and visual, as soon as Christine popped on the screen, I was like, oh my God, your skin looks like glass.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A little lighting. A little lighting.
So, like, I'm like, where the pores at? You know, beautiful, beautiful. So beautiful inside and out, and an amazing story today. So just to start off, because you're absolutely gorgeous, what's one misconception that you would say people have about you, and how have you challenged that?
One misconception. Wow.
Oh, are there a lot?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions. One misconception is that that I'm so what's the word for it? Like, I have no feelings. I'm just very strong and I'm very cold, or very just like, but meanwhile, I'm like the mushiest person ever. And I am very emotional. So a lot of people think that I'm not emotional, or they think, oh, you look like this, so you must have like you must feel like up here. And it's like, no, I've had my times where I was bullied for my nose and for my looks and for being biracial and not fitting in. And, so I've had all those things, but when people speak to me or look at me, they don't think that I have these feelings. So, over time, I've learned to embrace my big nose, embrace, I've always grew up, I'm biracial. So for me, I wind up having like thinner hair. So what did I do? I cut off my hair, so I had to learn how to adapt so that I can love myself and I can look in the mirror and feel good.
That's very interesting because, that you were saying as biracial, you don't really fit in. You're not all of one or all the other. And then kids are quick to point that out, aren't they? Like, what is the norm,
And you just spoke of grandmother. I remember my grandmother telling me at one time, she was like, if anybody ever asks you, you tell them that you're Spanish. Like, because she was taking care of me for a little while. And I guess she didn't want to deal with the stares and the looks or the questions. And she was like, just tell them that you're Spanish. And that really stuck in my head for a long time. So it wasn't more so that I got bullied because I was biracial. It was more so because of my looks. Like they couldn't really place what I was. And I remember walking down the street in Bed-Stuy with my father, who he's not a dark black man, but he's a black man. And then, I would be with him and people said, "What's that little white girl doing here?" So it was like either I was too white or I wasn't black enough. I wasn't black enough. I wasn't white enough. I was somewhere in the middle. And, having your grandmother tell you, pretend that anyone asks you're Spanish, it was like, well, so I couldn't feel comfortable for a very long time in my skin and who was I? Um, you know.
That must have been really challenging because, I mean, how did you deal with trying to be one or the other? That must have been such a internal conflict, I would imagine.
Well, I love my black culture. I love my Italian culture. I'm Italian, German, a little bit of Jewish in there from that side, and then my father's African American and Indian. So I I love both of those sides. So I just started to just do what I wanted to do. Like I just embrace both of the sides. Um, Obviously growing up, I was into hip hop, I was into rap, I'm into R&B. So that was my culture. That was me. And I was always like the lightest one in the room.
So I was saying that must have been challenging to try and like fit into one or the other, because I
Yeah.
kind of grew up in a mixed race home too, and just unbelievable, like some of the experiences that you have. And did that make you feel invisible in any way? And if so, how did that experience shape you today?
I think when my grandmother told me to pretend that I was Spanish, that made me feel a little bit invisible. Um, what was the question again? Sorry.
Like trying to fit in on either side, right? Like, did that make you feel invisible at some point? First of all, you're trying to pretend that you're somebody that you're not. Can you even speak Spanish?
No, actually, I never even pretended like I was Spanish. Like I never even tried to fit in. If anything, I wanted to let people know, like, no, I'm not Spanish. So the words that she said, I never tried to do that. I always was trying to prove that I was black. Like I
Oh,
was
okay.
really trying to prove, like, because obviously you could tell that I'm not full black, but I'm hanging out with my cousins,
Mm-hmm.
my dad. I'm going over my grandma's house. I'm going over my black grandma's house on the weekends. I'm eating ribs. I'm eating all kinds of soul food, and then I'm going back home to my Italian grandma, and I'm eating spaghetti on Fridays. I'm eating seafood on Fridays, meatball, on Sundays. So I never had to try to fit into the Italian side, but I knew that I was never fully accepted on that side. But I
On the
knew I
Italian side or the black side or
Yes.
both?
Well, on both, but I never really wanted to really try to fit into the Italian side for some reason. I always was drawn more to hip hop and rap, and my brother actually, I had a brother. I have my full brother who was murdered, and he lived in Marcy Projects, and him and I were only a year and a half apart, but my mom and my dad couldn't take care of neither one of us, so that's why I lived with my aunt and my uncle, which was with my grandmother, and he lived in Marcy with my other grandmother and my father, he wasn't really in the picture, like my mom wasn't really in the picture. So I was going over there, going to Marcy to go hang out with him, and he got caught up in the game, and he became a drug dealer, and he ultimately wound up being murdered. But I have so many great memories of just like going and hanging out. That's where Jay-Z and Biggie and all of them were. And so I wanted to be in the scene. I wanted to be with my people. I wanted to feel like I belonged. Because that was half of my identity, but I was still living in the white side.
Mm-hmm. So
So
I and I'm so sorry to hear about your brother.
thank you.
Yeah. That seems like that must have been pretty challenging though. And it seems as though community played a big part of your life as far as shaping you. Would you say that that was important to you growing up the community and how so?
Yeah, community was influenced me, and influenced my likes and my dislikes, and influenced, my fashion, as far as, because it was hip hop fashion. It influenced me having these feelings of trying to belong, because I'm in the community. But growing up, community also influenced, with the nonprofit work that I do. Like I see these young kids going through the same things that I went through. So I love to be with the community and serving. So it served me in not so great ways, and served me in great ways also. But throughout all of that, what got me through that to try to get to know myself was basically just saying fuck everyone. Like, I'm me. If I have a big nose, if I like, I remember I got teased for having big legs. Now that I'm an older woman, legs are what is what makes a body, you know what I'm saying? But here I am crying. I'm crying because I'm being teased for all these things at a certain point. And I had to just be like, listen, if no one else is gonna like me, I have to like myself. I have to like how I look. And it's amazing how anyone, you, me, but we could walk through the street and somebody say, my God, you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. But if you don't feel it yourself, you're not so beautiful. You know what I'm saying? If you're not feeling it, so you have to really believe this about your own self. So, community has done its good and it's done its bad with me, because it sets a certain stereotypes that you have to live up to, if you're in that realm. But if you move on and you get older and you have some beliefs in yourself, community can guide you, it can comfort you. Like now within my community, within my Black community, I will say, because that's where I work at, I'm so comforted. I'm so loved. I have so much love to give. So totally different from my childhood experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about embracing your authenticity. So, what's some advice that you would give to someone who feels like they don't belong? Because, you've obviously gone through it and come out shining, but what advice would you have? Because I think a lot of people feel like they don't belong, especially kids and, young folks.
Yeah, definitely. My advice would be to know that this world is hard right now. Like, you're growing up and you don't know everything, and things are going to be new, and people are different. People have different struggles. People have reasons why they say these mean things to you. You don't know whether they just came from getting beat from their parents, and maybe you look like somebody that they don't like, or that hurt them, and so you don't know where this meanness or this hurt is coming from. So always remember that you don't know where it's coming from, so it's not yours to take on. You got to really look and see what you like about yourself and run with it. Because if you don't like yourself, no one else is going to do it for you. I tell my son that all the time. I have a 24-year-old son, and he's going through his own thing of not liking the way that he looks. And I'm like, Zaya, you're so handsome. You know what I'm saying? You're so handsome. I said, you can't go by what other people say or how other people treat you. I said, you got to keep going for yourself, because if you don't, no one's going to do it for you. And so what, you may have a big nose, or you may have big legs, or you may have this. Okay, you got people in wheelchairs that don't have no legs and keep going.
Mhm.
Like, if you don't try, you don't push yourself, if you don't just be you, you'll never know what you can do and what you could be. And that's how I've gotten through. I've gotten like I still get it sometimes. People just like, and I just have to be like, oh, that's just dumb. Like, I'm gonna do what I have to do and what I want to do. Like, I'm quirky, I'm weird, I have attention deficit. I still get anxiety, but I still do what I want to do, and that's what makes me me.
And how did you have the courage to do what you do now? Because you designed like big name, Vanessa Williams, and people like this. How did you have like the courage, or even know you had the talent to do something like this?
I've always been an artist, And I've always liked to draw, but I'm not like a conventional artist. I'm like more of an abstract artist. And so I already knew that I wanted to do something with art. I didn't know if it was going to happen because of being a runaway. And, for a time, I was, I went through depression, and I had my son at a very young age, right after my brother was murdered. So I didn't know whether any of that stuff was going to happen. But I had a friend who was like, you should go to fashion school. I think I was like 23. I just had my son. You should go to fashion school. And I was like, fashion school. And then I went, and then, I got my degree, and then I got into the fashion industry. And I actually felt invisible when I first got into the fashion industry. I felt very invisible and different and alone. Um, I felt like I was in the fashion industry with professionals and a lot of white people. That's how I felt. And I felt like a minority. I felt like my style was different. I felt like I was just so different. So I even experienced that in my 20s, even in 30s, and maybe sometimes now in my 40s. But I felt invisible. And I remember what really made me feel invisible. I worked for one company, and they were Korean, and I think he hired me because he thought I was Spanish. Goes back to he thought I was Spanish, and everything was fine. And then I started to reveal pictures of my dad and my son, and then he was like, "Oh, you're not Spanish?" So I was like, "No, I'm biracial." And then after that, everything changed. He started to tell me that the way that I dressed was ghetto. Everything I did was wrong, even though I'm designing, and everything's great with my work. Everything about me personally was wrong once he found that out. And then like things went wrong in the office. I couldn't use the printer, and I had to get ready for a meeting. He was like, everything's always wrong with you, Christine. Everything's always wrong. Something. So then I was pissed off, and I was like, can you use the fucking printer? Can you use the printer today? Can you use the printer? Everyone said, I said, so no one could use the fucking printer, right? And then I just walked into the bathroom, and then when I came out, the secretary was like, oh, he wants to speak to you. I said, yeah, I figured that. So I knew I was going to be fired, and I really didn't give a fuck. I didn't care.
Mhm.
Care because there was the last time that someone's going to make me feel invisible or not worthy because of what did it come down to? Because of what I was. It wasn't because of my work. It wasn't because of that. So then he was like, I'm gonna have to let you go. I said, you go ahead and do that. I said, but this be the last time that you treat somebody like this. I'm telling you. And when I took him to court and I sued him,
Oh,
I sued him, and he settled out of court, and his wife was his lawyer. But during that time, he also said, oh, you can't use drugs in here. I'm like, drugs? Like, why would I, do that? But meanwhile, we had a holiday party, and my other head designer, who we're both head designers now, who's white, takes out a bong and starts smoking weed on the rooftop. And he stands there and it's like, blow it in my face. And I'm sitting there looking like,
the boss said that?
the one that told me that I can't have no weed, no, and I'm like, so all these things happen, and I was like, no one's going to do that to me again. So, and that was very much early on in my career. And then, as I just started to say, fuck that, let me do me, let me dress how I want to dress, let me do my hair how I want to do my hair, which I've always done, but I more so embraced it. And my design started to get picked up more. And I started to be able to speak more in rooms, and I realized that all the higher ups that were supposed to be higher ups were actually looking at me for my style. Even till today, I'm still looked at for my style and for just the way that I speak. I don't speak perfect. I have like a very Brooklyn accent. I'm not prim and proper, but I'm still me. And I'm just going whether I'm embraced or I'm not. But luckily I have been embraced. I think sharing that, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect, but I'm here and I have a good heart. I will, curse you out sometimes, but I'm here, you know.
What an experience. What an experience. I mean, because sometimes people don't know what they're saying, like especially if they don't know your background. I remember sharing some vacation pictures with my former boss a few bosses back, and there were all races there, right? The very next day, I was treated differently from then on.
Uh,
And I
are you
was
biracial
like,
as well?
huh?
You biracial as well?
I mean, I guess you could say that.
I mean,
I guess you could say that, but I've got all kinds of, I feel like it's like the what do they call it, the UN, And
mhm,
I had all shades.
yeah.
And it was immediately I went from being the favorite to the stepchild,
Hmm.
and I was like, I cannot believe this. And look, the same thing happened to you, just
Yeah.
because he found out, which is really so sad,
Yeah.
because it's the same talent, it's the same design strategy that you were doing before, but now suddenly something's wrong with it, and you're no longer welcome to use the printer. Like in
Exactly.
Hidden Figures, she can't use that coffee pot, she can't use that toilet, like it's, what year are we talking about here, folks?
Yeah, and you wouldn't think that someone like my complexion would go through that because I have friends and family members that are darker, and they're like, you don't know what you haven't experienced being put down because of your race or your color. Because look at your color, how can you deal with stuff like that? But I deal with it on a different level than
Mhm.
they would.
Yeah. And you also do, because you mentioned briefly, like some volunteer work with kids who are going through similar things that you've gone through.
Yeah, yeah. I went for, well, actually in 2008, I was working for Jones, New York, and I had lost my job because of the whole 2008, the crash and all that stuff, whatever we were experiencing. And I was like, what am I going to do? So I went to take a screen printing class in Harlem, a workshop. It was like maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And by the end of the workshop, the instructor asked me to take over the workshop because she was leaving, because I already had Photoshop experience. So I was going home and printing on my kitchen table, and I was coming in. So I was making t-shirts, and because I just fell in love with being able to do graphics and make my own t-shirts. I was doing graphics at work. I was doing textiles. So I was designing, Jones, New York was doing
Mhm.
prints and stuff like that, but I never had actually knew the screen printing process. So once I learned that, I was open off of that. So either way, she asked me to take over. It was in Harlem Textile Works, and they're a nonprofit. And part of that was me putting together summer programs for the youth, for the kids within the neighborhood, and then we had year-round programs for kids that were going to like schools that they needed help with. They were bad kids, but they were really good. So I would put together programs for them, and I had a great time working with them. That was my first time. I did that for about 2 or 3 years. And then I did other nonprofits off and on. Most recently, I went to, where did I go? Catskills, and I ran the art program for the kids. So I stood up there, I want to say like 8 days or 9 days, and I put together a little program for them, and I had them make scarves. We didn't use silk scarves, but we still made scarves. We cut up t-shirts, and it was beautiful. I just absolutely love working with the kids because it's like how could you
It
not?
felt giving back, right?
Yeah. And then especially like, and I actually shared my diary with them when I was 17 and I was in the juvenile delinquent, um, just fucking fly.
Is that
Juvenile.
is that when you were, because I think I've heard you say you were a runaway?
Yeah, when my mom, so I lived with my aunt and my uncle, and they were Spanish. But my aunt wasn't Spanish, but my uncle was Spanish, Poppy, and I called him, it was my father. Like he spoiled me to death. He actually had two kids that he wasn't even living with, but for some reason he was in love with my aunt. But they both were drug addicts, and she more so than him. And I still love her to this day. Her attitude, like, and I'm even named after her, but she took dope, so I had to witness a lot of nodding off and a lot of that. And I wish I was invisible then, because I
Oh,
remember going, and that's another thing. I remember going on a train And I don't know why I wasn't in school, but everyone else was in school. It was a school trip and I wasn't in school and I was with my aunt, but here she is not enough. And everyone's looking at me. So at one point, that's another thing that touches, like I got tired of people looking at me because me and May was too light, and what was I doing in this neighborhood? What, I'm with my aunt and she's nodding off. People looking at me. So I really did develop a self-consciousness about like people looking at me. So that's one thing that I had to overcome. Like now when people are looking at me, I'm like, they're looking at you because you look nice, girl, not because of somebody's nodding off or you're in the wrong neighborhood or you're too light, you're too that. But either way, when my aunt and my uncle died years apart, I was just looking at the dates. My aunt died in 90, and then my brother was murdered in 97. But either way, when she passed away, probably before she passed, but my mom was always in the picture, but she wasn't really in the picture. But my aunt was my mother. I knew that my mother was my mother, but I never call her mother. It took me a long time to call her by mom. Like her name was her name, and I had to get used to it. But when she came back, I was dealing with she coming back. My aunt is dying. I'm already going through all these different things. And so I started to just rebel. I'm like, who the fuck are you? Like, I'm not listening to you. I don't like
Where have you
where were
been?
you? Where have you been? Now I'm older. I understand that she did the best that she could because she was going through, she was being abused, and she was in the streets. She was a runaway. She came from a house where she was abused as well. So she was running away, and the best thing that she could have did was give me to my aunt. But no one knew that my aunt wasn't going to be, my aunt did the best, but she's a drug addict, at that point, at that time. So when she came back, I just like, I'm not listening to you. So we got into a lot of fights and a lot of, I'm only 13, 14, 13 years old. And I started to run away. Like, I'm not listening to you. I could go hang out, but I got caught in the streets and getting caught in the streets, running away. I was picked up on pins first. And then after that, I actually ran away and hooked up with a girl who had a boyfriend out on 42nd Street, and he was selling drugs, right? And for me to be able to stay and survive, I had to sell drugs too. So what happens? I get arrested on 42nd Street, which, mind you, is right up the block from my first job in the fashion industry. So I get to walk past the place that I got arrested as a juvenile delinquent in the fashion industry. So I absolutely love that, love seeing it because I'm just like, oh, okay.
That's
Yeah.
a full circle woman, if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, so I got arrested there. I got sent upstate, Lansing, Tryon. It was a whole ordeal. I had a okay time there. I wasn't abused or anything like that. But I stood in the system until I was 17. I came
Wow.
home. I came home, and so so then I came home at 17. I got my GED, and then my brother died like 2 years after that. So
Mm.
after that, I was really wilding out. I was really just in the streets and
Well,
just doing,
thank goodness you like got it together because look at you now, like
yeah,
amazing. If someone wants to work with you, how do they get in touch with you?
definitely. They could contact me on my website, ChristineReneeDesignStudio.com.
Say it slower. Christine Renee Design Studios.com, everybody.
ChristineReneeDesignStudio.com. They could look me up on Instagram, the same handle, Christine Renee Design Studio. Well, you get it. Christine Renee Design Studio. And also on TikTok as well.
All right. Keep being fabulous, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye,
So much.
y'all.
Thank you for having me.